Welcome to 1/4" TS cable assembly. Step 1 is to strip the outer jacket using the rotary stripper. Insert the rotary stripper to remove approximately 3/4 inches of the outer jacket. Once the jacket has been scored, remove the outer jacket piece. We're left with the shield exposed. Pull back on the French braid shield to loosen it. Then, with a pointed implement, to insert underneath the shield, and then through the braid to unbraid the shield. Do this all the way to the outer jacket. Then take the shield wires and organize and wind them into one conductor. Like so. Next step is to remove the insulation around the inner conductor using the 16 gauge wire strippers. We only need to remove about 1/8 of an inch. Now our shield and our inner conductor are the same length. We need to trim the shield back to be behind the insulation on the inner conductor. That's the appropriate trim length for a 1/4" TS. Now it's time to prep the cable by tinning these exposed conductors. We'll start with the inner conductor. That's going to make up the hot signal path. Going to apply heat and a small amount of solder until the solder flows into the wire. We'll repeat the process with the shield, noting that it will require more solder and more heat as it's a larger conductor. We want to continue tinning all the way down to where the braid is still woven together near the outer jacket. Here are the parts that come in the connector bag. The connector itself, the blue cable clamp, the outer shell, and the black cable boot. Now it's time to prep the connector by applying a small amount of solder to the inner conductors. Watch the solder flow. We'll repeat the process for the ground path conductor, applying a small amount of solder to the connection. At this point, we're going to want to load the cable boot onto the cable itself, as we will not have the opportunity after the connector is affixed. Simply insert the prepped ends of your cable through the cable boot. Note the way the cable boot goes on. Next step is to solder our conductors to our connector. We'll start with the ground pad, consisting of the shield wire. We heat up the union of the connector and the shield wire until the solder between them flows, and then we remove the heat. Repeat the process with the inner conductor that will make up the hot signal path. We put it in place and we apply heat until the solder flows between the connector and the wire freely. There it goes. And then we remove the heat. Now it's time to load the cable clamp. It'll slip over the cable from the outside through the slit in the side. It goes as such. Now let's check to make sure that the cable clamp actually lands on the outer jacket. Looks like we're good here. Next step is to put the outer shell over the TS connector and slide it all the way down. Then we'll slide the boot up to meet up with the outer shell. We screw the cable clamping boot into the outer shell. We try to get it as tight as we can. And here's the finished cable and connector assembly. Lastly, it's time to check our cable assembly to make sure it's functioning properly. we're using our digital multimeter set to a resistance reading, and we'll make contact between both sleeves of the connectors. See a low resistance. And then we'll move the contacts to both tips. It's important to make sure we have not reversed the wiring of the connectors, and we have low resistance between all conductors. That's it.